Okay, so again, welcome to the meeting. We appreciate you joining us. Um, we do also invite you to complete a self-identification survey. I put the link in the chat, and then it's also available at tempe.gov/neighborhood surveys. And Chase, if you could go to the next slide. So the project is helped along with some of our federal funds. And so as part of that, Tempe, under Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and related statutes, ensure that no person on the grounds of race, color, national origin, sex, disability, and age be excluded from participation in or be denied the benefits of or subjected to discrimination under any federally funded program or activity it administers. And if you do believe you have been aggrieved, then there's contact information there on the slide, as well as on our website. And again, the voluntary self-identification survey is available for you. And then I will now turn it over to Chase Wellman, our planner on the project.
Great, thank you, Shauna. Is everyone hearing me okay? Shauna, all good?
I can hear you, yes.
Okay, great. Thanks, Shauna. As Shauna mentioned, my name is Chase Wallman, Principal Planner with Tempe Transportation, and wanted to thank you all for joining us on your lunch hour to review our preliminary design and provide your feedback for the bike pedestrian bridge over Union Pacific Railroad. I'm also joined today here with our Senior Transportation Planner, Lindsay Post, and our Project Manager with TY Lynn, Ryan. So Ryan will be going over our preliminary design concepts a little bit later on in the PowerPoint. But first, I wanted to provide a bit of project history. So for those who weren't able to join in our first round of public meetings, this project is to prepare the preliminary design and project assessment report for a project to connect Broadway to Apache Boulevard over Union Pacific Railroad. So this preliminary design project will prepare that design assistance report, and in that report, that will detail the opportunity and constraints for the project. The report will detail preliminary environmental, utility, and right-of-way considerations, as well as develop a cost estimate. And it's really the first opportunity for us to get public feedback on the project, which can really drive the design going forward at this very early stage. So there is no final design or construction funding identified yet for this project. But this is a typical first step of our larger capital improvement projects where we develop this preliminary design. So the project was originally identified in Tempe's Transportation Master Plan as well as the general plan. Additionally, this project initial design concepts were developed in 2017 as part of the larger Country Club Way Bike Boulevard project. So that was another preliminary design project which provided a preliminary design for a bike and pedestrian corridor stretching from Warner Road to the Rio Salado Path system. In between this was the preferred alignment that was designated, and there's a photo here from our 2017 public outreach showing that alignment and some annotations that residents had made regarding the barrier that Union Pacific Railroad poses in between Broadway and Apache. So that preliminary design project ultimately culminated in many different phases. Given the size and price of the entire 7.5 mile bike boulevard, the project needed to be split up in phases. This image on the right is showing the bike boulevard alignment. So this orange line is a Country Club Way Bike Boulevard. That's the one that we were talking about today. We have phases north and south of this project already programmed for design and construction. This is the last remaining gap in between those projects, in between Broadway and Apache Boulevard, where we don't currently have the program funding. So this is a first step for working towards that. So the corridor from US 60 to Warner Road, that is under construction now and is anticipated to be complete later this year. As we work our way north of the US 60, this project from the 60 to Broadway Road is programmed in the city's 5-year capital improvement program. And we are anticipating beginning design for that in 2025. The north of this project corridor at Smith and Apache from Smith Road from Apache to Rio Salado Parkway. That's our Smith Road bike lane project. And that project is also phased, but currently under construction. And that will leave off at Rio Salado Parkway. And then north of Rio Salado Parkway, in the interim, we are working with Best Star, the property owner, to find a connection from Rio Salado Parkway to the south bank of the Rio Salado path, as well as pursuing additional grant funding opportunities to complete that gap. So there's many sections of this ultimate corridor that are already programmed for design and construction, but this is an important gap that we need to address. So this video is going to take us from Warner Road and work our way north to our project corridor. So this is ASU Research Park, where we're proposing an off-street multi-use path. And then this is the Regional Western Canal path. We're working our way north towards the Optimus Park neighborhood, eventually getting to the US 60 pedestrian bridge. Here we're nearing McClintock High School as well as Sella Park. And as we get to Broadway Road here, this is the southern terminus of our preliminary design project at Los Feliz and Broadway. We'll get into an industrial area, which is primarily industrial land uses with no sidewalks and no striping on the roadway. There's a functionally abandoned railroad spur here. And to the north of here is where we would connect to the Apache Police Department Substation Drive. And as we continue east along Apache, we'll be proposing protected bike lanes to connect to our Smith Road bike lane project and the light rail. From here, this is that Smith Road bike lane project, which will be implementing bike lanes as well as some pedestrian accessibility improvements along the corridor. This continues all the way until Rio Salado Parkway. From here, this is the Tempe Marketplace gap, and this will connect eventually to the Rio Salado South Bank path, where you could either go east into the city of Mesa or go under McClintock Drive using our underpass and connect to the Rio Salado South Bank path, which continues west into Tempe. We're ending this video here at an area of two other future program projects. That includes the Rio Salado North Bank path connecting the Indian Bend Wash to McClintock Drive, as well as an upstream dam bike and pedestrian bridge, which will eventually connect the north and south banks of the Rio Salado Path system. So again, really zooming into our project area specifically, this is that missing gap in between Broadway Road and Apache Boulevard. So this yellow dashed line represents our project area. In September of 2023, we held our first round of public meetings. The public outreach period was held from September 14th to September 28th. In total, we received 92 total survey responses. Most of the respondents lived in Tempe, with 41 respondents living within a mile of the project corridor. I'm now going to look at some existing conditions as well as go over some of the public outreach that we heard from our first round of public meetings. So this is a view looking south at Los Feliz Drive and Broadway Road. This is currently looking at the intersection, which is unsignalized. We're now getting into the industrial area along Los Feliz Drive. This is at Los Feliz and Broadway, looking north towards Encanto Drive. So you can see the existing condition here is about a 40-foot wide roadway without any striping and no sidewalks here. So there is some varied landscaping, which includes some mature trees, turf areas, as well as decomposed granite. Some of the public outreach that we heard from the first round of surveys was for a consideration of protecting in place some mature trees that are along the site, as well as providing for an opportunity to supplement with additional new trees for both pedestrians and bicyclists along the corridor. So although this is just a preliminary stage and we don't specify any landscaping yet at this 15% design, this is something that we will obviously be looking into with and if the final design gets funded. So that is something that we will be considering in the future. In addition, there was a desire for increased separation between vehicles and bicyclists. Previously in our first round of public meetings, we were proposing a standard bike lane with sidewalks. This was a sentiment as far as the separation between bicycles and vehicles that was shared as well with some of the property owners within this area. So the concern here was the intermingling of the freight traffic that is along this corridor, as well as being able to resume business operations with staggered freight deliveries along the corridor. So being cognizant that these curb lanes are used for some additional freight traffic on there. So we're looking to respond to that in our preliminary design. This is as we are approaching our South Bridge landing. So something else that we heard when talking with adjacent property owners was really the concern for continued trespassing that they observe within this area. So right now, this is an open railroad spur where the adjacent property owners have stated that they experience persistent trespassing, both from Encanto Drive as well as along the railroad spur. So this is an image looking west along the railroad tracks. Now we're north of the Union Pacific Railroad along the Apache Police Department Substation Drive. This is a view at the south end of the property, looking north towards Apache Boulevard. This is a view from Apache Boulevard at the driveway entrance, looking south at the Apache PD Substation Drive. So some of the themes that we heard for this segment, the bridge segment, was to increase visibility around turns. So there's multiple turns just due to the natural alignment of this railroad spur and being able to provide for the vertical clearance required for Union Pacific rail cars. So that was a consideration that we looked at as we revised the designs. There was a desire to reduce slopes of the bridge where possible, understanding that we need to comply with ADA accessibility concerns, as well as really providing for an opportunity for respite along the project corridor. Additionally, there was desires for solar panel integration. This could be used to obviously power the lighting along the bridge, as well as functionally act as shade for the whole bridge corridor. Many of the responses desired increased shade along there, so we tried to directly respond to that as well. Additionally, with the trespassing concerns as well, we looked at what kind of access is provided underneath the bridge and really limiting those opportunities. And then finally, we're working our way north, and this is the Apache Boulevard section. So this is looking right now along the north curve of the Apache Boulevard, looking south towards the PD Substation Drive. This corridor has standard bike lanes currently, and you'll see a minimum for most of the corridor of 8-foot sidewalks. There's some different design treatments as well as very shallow setbacks of the buildings along here. So these also provide shade opportunities along the corridor. You'll see some additional site furnishings such as benches or bike loops, and some supplementary pedestrian and street lighting as well. And this is the final view looking at the light rail station at Smith and Apache. And this will be our northern connection to the Smith Road bike lane projects, which continue north to the Rio Salado Parkway. So at our first round of public meetings, we asked for feedback on 2 different design alternatives, one which was a raised bike lane, another being a protected bike lane. So some themes that were in support of the raised bike lane were that users would not have to interact with the curb and gutter, that seam in between the pavement and the curb and gutter. There is additional concerns about the vertical delineators and bollards and the ongoing maintenance for those, as well as just providing for additional separation by grade between vehicles and bicyclists. Some themes in support of protected bike lanes included perceived better visibility, specifically with driveway integration, visual vertical separation elements. So again, the The vertical delineators are mentioned here, this time not for the maintenance concern, but for providing for the vertical separation and queue there. And then consistency with at-grade bike lanes on Apache. So like I said, the existing condition are on-street bike lanes, so this would remain consistent with that at the same grade without users having to go to an elevated grade for a small segment of Apache. So this was about 47% in favor of those raised bike lanes and 53% in favor of protected bike lanes. With that, I'm now going to hand it over to Ryan, who will go in a little bit more in depth into our preliminary design and how we responded to some of the feedback that we heard.
Sure. Hello, everybody. My name is Ryan Wozniak. I work for TY Lin, Senior Transportation Planner. It's my utmost pleasure to be part of this project and help lead the design efforts. So, and been great to be in partnership with the community and staff throughout this whole process. So 100% my pleasure to be part of this. We're going to start at the southernmost terminus here at the intersection, which is conceived as to provide an additional signal at this location where there's not existing a signal today. What you see is the starts of a conceptual intersection, try to promote additional visual cues, high contrast crosswalks across Broadway, and then most likely some crosswalks across the additional pieces there too. But just a start of a concept there that we can build off of in future phases. These projects tend to have about 5 steps of the design. We're at the first step, so there'd be 4 more bites at refining these details down the way, with usually a lot of things still loose at this stage, and incrementally getting more and more nailed down as those design phases occur. That we can move into the industrial section. Los Feliz travels north and then to Encanto Drive, which will then connect to the base of the approach to the bridge. But starting off in just the industrial section, obviously not a whole lot of eye candy necessarily in industrial complexes, but from that user experience, we are trying to find the most attractive multi-use path within this section, starting with the west edge, or sorry, we'll start off with the east edge. This is going to maintain just as a sidewalk condition with the general pavement being served for all the freight traffic and commercial purposes. We're trying to use some bump outs here at the west edge of that pavement to provide a little additional protection for the multi-use path, which is being designed to City of Tempe's standard widths of 10 feet. And then, so that would provide for bi-directional use. And yeah, so then these bump outs also provide additional planting zones where we get to introduce some new trees and plant species. What that bump out also does is provide a little bit of warning space as people approach that multi-use path to be able to stop and before there's an immediate conflict between turning into a driveway and reaching that vulnerable user in that context. That then wraps around. We stay on the south side of Encanto Drive on purpose because we want to take advantage of the mature trees here for shade condition. When you stay on the north side of mature trees, you take advantage of the additional tree shade that is there. So the conditions should be lit for nighttime use, shaded for daytime use, and so those peak heat loads should be taken care of. There's additional crosswalk here that's been marked from the end of where we start grade separated on our way to the bridge. And that's utilizing this 30-foot abandoned rail spur. Well, it's at least not being utilized rail spur from UPRR connection to the railroad or connection to the industrial park here. This should be a signalized condition. There's concerns from adjacent property owners in terms of What does an elevated view shed into their properties? How does that necessarily potentially impact their access to vandalism and all the other sorts of trespassing issues that are happening in here? So we get into a little bit of ways to discourage that, and that'll be better illustrated in the next couple slides. Here's a blow up of that rendering to show how those curb extensions provide that planting zone and to the multi-use path, the lighting condition, all of which try to provide a more comfortable condition for users of the path. Here's a bit of a breakdown of existing conditions over here in the pictures on the left side of the slide. We noted in our field reviews that there's overhead lines that'll need to be addressed in future phases of design. Here's the abandoned tracks that are no longer servicing the community. Obviously, lots of overgrown conditions and litter and some encampment activities happening in this area. So all of which are concerns for surrounding property owners. But we think that this design will help address a lot of that. We've helped to create barriers for trespassing and then all the vandalism that's currently occurring back here. There's plenty of graffiti along these walls, along the railroad, but this project will close off the access to the railroad from Price Road, so this corridor will still be open for trespassing from that route, but from the industrial route, or this attractive crossing, it should not promote any more vandalism or access or for trespassing in that regard. We are applying design standards and making sure that we stay clear of all the train needs for Union Pacific Railroad. As you make your way up the ramp, we have to do so at a grade that is that almost maxes out what ADA regulations require. We do not have a whole lot of length between this end of the bridge and our landing down at grade to take too gradual of a slope. So it will be at a 7.5 to 1.5, 7.5 to 1.5% grade, which gets you a little slope, little landing, little slope, little landing. It will be flat across the condition of the bridge, and then on our approach to the north, between that end of the bridge and this end of the landing, gives us a nice long run. This gives us a way to make for a nice gradual condition, 4.5% all the way down. So this will be a little bit friendlier on the slope because of the space that we're allowed, this long drive provides. The drive at the police substation does shift to the west and has to be reconstructed on either edge to maintain 20 feet of access for emergency vehicle response. We do try to maintain a landscaping area for those trees to continue to make that as comfortable of an environment as possible. And there's some parking that's reconstructed here at the evidence building. We have one utility box that creates a bit of a pinch, but still maintains ADA access along this side. Next. This is the view looking south. So this provides you kind of that orientation for this picture over here of the perspective rendering. Shows the sidewalk on the police substation side, shows the multi-use path on the west side, I'm sorry, the east side. Police have asked for an additional barrier here between the multi-use path and emergency response vehicles to help mitigate for potential conflicts. So nobody can, misbehave too erratically to disturb emergency response times, I guess is the concern. These are existing conditions that show the wide drive today. This condition would have to be widened in order to provide that comfortable multi-use path that you see here in the rendering. The drive basically stays in the same condition at this intersection. And now that we get to Apache, you start to see these markings and protected bike paths at street grade. And so we'll get into a little bit more detail on that in the next slides. This is a nighttime rendering to show the condition. The enclosure both provides protection from the elements for heat and shade, but it also provides surface for the light to bounce off of to make the space a little bit more inviting, a little bit more cozy, a little bit safer feeling for the users of the path. We've tried to balance both the need for screening view sheds into sensitive areas while also providing as much openness and airiness to make users feel as comfortable as possible in the space. We have these shade slats that are angled at just the right angle to provide maximum shade for summer solstice and minimal shade for winter solstice to maximize climate comfort throughout the seasons. This is a view from inside Police Substation Drive, looking up at the bridge. Nice gradual slope that I highlighted earlier. Looking at the bridge crossing UPRR, we have provided additional screening and shade elements without trying to make it feel too enclosed, too entrapped. It will be viewable walls that we continue to use these types of screening materials within here. So as people make this this wraparound, yes, it's sort of conceived as a metal, perforated metal to allow for visual periphery, but also shade and feeling of enclosure for safety, so that nobody comes over the concrete wall, the stem wall here. This art is very conceptual. It's meant to sort of represent future art applications from local artists in future phases of the design. And this is starting to approach the south edge of the approach as you make your way into the industrial. We're looking up towards the bridge from the industrial complex at this point. Okay, so this is going to be an animation just to orient you. We have been looking at a lot of the projects so far from south to north. This takes us from north to south. So anybody who has that travel condition, this might give you a little bit better of a look at here. Off the bottom edge of the screen, there is a bit better of a rendition of the section. We'll look at a rendering of that street section a little bit more carefully, but you can imagine that that condition would continue through as long as it's not interrupting driveways. There would be some post and buffered striping that would occur along the entire edge here of Apache. Here's Smith Martin Station, and the right off the left edge of the screen here would be the new cul-de-sac development to the south of Apache. Go ahead and start the animation. It's going to move a little fast. Once it gets going, we start looking down Police Substation. This will give you a sense of shadows throughout the day and about a June day. Swing around, kind of see down the ramp north, around the curve. Again, perforated sort of materials, screening from one side and lattice on the other. Coming down through the industrial park into the new intersection that's signalized at Broadway and Los Feliz. Here's that section that we were talking about in terms of a concept that would help to provide that protection at grade of the street. And this is a 2-foot little buffer zone with the flex post delimitors with a solid curbing at the base of that. It is a low profile curb, and these are becoming very popular in installments for budget friendly yet effective protections within these types of contexts. And so this would help move the project along because of the cost effectiveness benefit cost ratio would really show well for future funding competitiveness. And so there is a reconstruct zone here. This is where the existing curb is today. So the curb would move, widening the road section just enough to provide that protected but yet comfortable navigation at 6.5 feet of bike lane. The post would be really in the middle of that 2 foot, so you still get some buffer over here adjacent to the edge of the bike lane before you get to general travel lanes. Reconstructing the sidewalk to a full 8 feet as City of Tempe's standard would provide, and highlighting where the posts would then not be within the intersections, but we would try to highlight that to the drivers coming into the driveways, into the intersections, that there's potential for conflict. And so those details would be ironed out in further phases of the design as well. A little blow up of that section to give you a sense of how that would feel in 3 dimensions. This would be a typical half street constructed condition for Apache from the start of the project to the end of the project, where we reach the Apache. So this would really only be about 1/4 of a mile between where the start of the project is here on Apache to the police substation. So those conditions would continue to flex and provide as much protection as possible while maintaining the lane widths for turning lanes and travel lanes. As this project continues to be designed, there's more elements yet to be designed into all of the details, whether that be wayfinding signage, additional seating, additional camera or monitoring for protective purposes, and crime prevention through environmental design anticipated, more landscaping, more solar panels and shading, and emergency response buttons. Call boxes. So with that, I'll hand it back over to Chase to talk about next steps and how this project continues to stay on track to deliver a project that we've heard a lot of excitement about throughout previous public engagement over this and all the public comments that came in. We're happy to help keep this thing moving forward.
Yeah, thank you, Ryan. One thing I wanted to point out too, as Ryan was going over all these elements, is that we really are in the preliminary design stage and conceptual stage. So talking about materiality, colors of things, we have placeholder images of where public art integration might be in the future. These are all basically placeholders so that we can visualize some of these things. We want to focus on what elements we're providing, like shade and public art and proper ventilation and proper screening. But the design of these, the color of these, the materiality of things, we could explore that, and we'll explore that further in a final design phase. So these are shown right now kind of more conceptually. But as far as next steps go, we are on our second round of public meetings currently. We received feedback from that first round of public meetings, Tempe's Transportation Commission, as well as on-site meeting with property owners, Tempe and Tempe Police Department, so that we could give their feedback as the main stakeholders in this immediate area. Additionally, this public outreach will be held for 2 weeks. We'll have a meeting in person tonight at Escalante Center. All the same materials will be available to view at that in-person meeting. And these same materials will also be hosted on the project webpage. But we will gather for the next 2 weeks for the public outreach, as well as the property owner outreach and internal stakeholder outreach. We'll gather all of that over the next month and revise the design accordingly based on that feedback. and plan to finalize our project assessment report, 15% plans, and cost estimate in the summer of 2024. And then with that, we'll have a cost estimate available and some preferred design concepts so that we can pursue additional funding for final design and construction, which are not currently identified yet. The project survey is available at tempe.gov/forum. This is where you'll be able to document all of your feedback, and it'll be collected with all the other feedback received over the next couple of weeks. The same materials are available online now at the project webpage. That's tempe.gov/UPRR Bike Ped Bridge. That'll include this presentation. A recording of this presentation will be available on the webpage later, as well as the public meeting boards, which will be displayed in person tonight as well. With that, my project information is there on the screen. You can reach out if you have any additional questions, but now we will open it up to any questions or feedback that you have currently.
Thanks, Chase. We did have a couple in the chat as you're making your presentation that I'll go through first, and then anyone else, you're welcome to put your questions in the chat, or you can raise your hand and speak as well. So the first question was, as mentioned at the previous meetings, there are already 2 streetlights on Broadway from Price to McClintock. This would add a third. Can the city look at a traffic circle instead? And a traffic circle could also add GSI and shade. And GSI is green stormwater infrastructure.
Yeah, thank you for that question. That is something that we heard in the first round of public feedback. So we will be exploring that during the final design phase. There are a few considerations that we wanted to think through that we need to better understand, and that included bike and pedestrian connectivity through a traffic circle rather than a signalized intersection. Sometimes it could hinder connectivity for those modes of travel. So that's something that we're going to look closer at during the final design stage. So for right now, we're still proposing a signalized intersection due to that, but we will commit to looking at that as an alternative during the final design phase.
Okay, and then I know you had mentioned that the materials right now aren't decided, but there are comments asking if it was all metal. They like the tree shrub elements to add all of those, and that they wish there could be more desert plants and significantly less metal. So don't know if you want to reply to that before we get to the next question, or.
Yeah, definitely. We hear that loud and clear from the feedback that we received, that landscaping and shade and careful consideration for heat gain and making it a comfortable pedestrian environment were really a priority. So that's something that we'll look at in the final design to see what kind of specifications, and we'll work with our sustainability and resilience staff as well to identify maybe some alternative materiality or design specifications that would really respond to the concerns for additional shade or reducing heat gain in those areas to make a more comfortable environment. So those will all be explored during the final design phase. We're just at this 15% level. It's just not at a scale of design where we would specify lighting or landscaping or the individual type of materials.
If I could too, just from a consultant's perspective, you know, the consulting team that puts together these proposals at 30 and 60, like the future design phases of this will be, you know, built out, I think, according to the public's feedback here. So the landscaping and lighting and all those require certain skill sets that may not be fully represented here at the 15%.
Thank you. Next question. In the first round of public input, I know that you heard desire to consider the rail spur to the east due to the problem of school children using a routing along Apache that the west spur choice requires. How have you considered a Smith alignment?
Yeah, so that was already considered in the 2017 preliminary design. This alignment was the preferred alignment to move forward into this stage of the preliminary design. And that was due to the connection to Sella Park, as well as the available right-of-way and overall cost to construct the project. So those were the main determining factors for why we pursued this preferred alignment. We have heard for the desire to explore that other alignment as well. So that can certainly be a subject of an additional study where we look at that alignment. But for the purposes of this project, we are focusing squarely on this alignment at Los Feliz Drive.
And then Related to that, do we have data on semi-arterial routing for school bike paths and whether these connections get used? All of the Escalante area use would impact this area of concerns.
So I think the question was for if we have any data collection for pedestrian or bike
Yeah,
path, is
on
that right?
semi-arterial routing for school bike paths and whether those connections get used.
I'm not sure if I understand the question still. We would gather before and after counts as part of our design. We don't have anything that I don't think speaks to what the data request is. I'm not sure if I'm understanding, but they could elaborate further on
Gretchen,
that.
I saw you come off you mute. Please feel free to elaborate.
Yeah, so here's the concern. One of the, obviously this is a major bike arterial path and lots of different people will use it. And for some, the going around things is going to be enough that they're going to not come off of their arterials because that's the kind of bicyclists there are. But the group that really, really needs this is those are school kids getting to after school programs, being able to, in junior high, particularly in high school, be able to get to and from school using a bicycle and giving that kind of access. And so I'm, aware there are studies that suggest whether things get used or don't get used. And I don't know what they are for something that's comparable to Apache. My concern is that by choosing that left spur, and I want to be clear, I also put in a comment about Sella. This isn't, that alignment makes sense to the south of Broadway. Once you're north of Broadway, you're coming in right between those two spurs. So, it's a choice. There's two spurs. But anyway, the point is of when you choose the left, you also are choosing that to use Apache. And when you do that, the question is, are you impacting the probability that youths are ever going to use this route? And we need to be, if that's the case, and I believe that there should be some data out there, somebody who focuses on these kinds of things should be able to help us understand what are the ramifications for the future use of this for those particularly needed constituents, our school children, our junior high, especially from my neighborhood's perspective, because you can get to your elementary school, but you cannot get to your junior high or high school.
Yeah, it's well noted, Gretchen. There are some connectivities that I think will be enhanced through this alignment, especially when speaking about McClintock High School. We're looking at additional projects as well, which you may be aware of through different grant opportunities, connecting east-west over to Smith Road from different areas of Escalante or the Victory Acres neighborhood. So we're trying to address all that additional connectivity as well. As these opportunities are presented. I think, the goal of this project is to provide for a low stress connection, comfortable connection for bicyclists and pedestrians over Union Pacific Railroad that doesn't exist today and connect some of those significant destinations such as Sella Park or McClintock High School. So I think as this progresses, we're also thinking concurrently about other projects that will provide and enhance that connectivity east-west as well. So I hope that gets to your point, and it's well noted. It's not, I think it is an interesting study and probably a good research topic as well. It's not something that is in the scope of this project to do necessarily right now, but I think it would show that there is a propensity for needing this comfortable route over Union Pacific Railroad.
All right, next question. Could a hawk crossing be considered at the Main Street crossings instead of the signalized intersection?
Well, we have our city traffic engineer here as well, Kathy Hollow. You want to address that, Kathy?
So if we wanted to change the signal on, you're talking about the one on Broadway, we would take it off the intersection. You don't put a hawk at an intersection. It's too confusing for all the movement. So, and what I actually would probably put in a ped signal anyways if we were gonna use one, but it would be mid-block. So, I think that diverts traffic from the path that has been planned. I'm not sure that would be a good idea on this one.
Okay, and then next question, has the city already accepted bids on construction of this project? It would be great to see the city take steps towards utilizing unionized workers in the construction of the project.
Yeah, so to answer that question, no, this project does not have any program funding currently for final design or construction. It's something that we are pursuing additional grant funding opportunities for. So right now, this is the first stage, just the preliminary design to help develop the cost estimate and give us the opportunity to pursue additional funding. So at this time, no, it hasn't been bid. There's no timetable for its construction until we secure additional funding. But once we do, and if the source is federal funding grants, like many of our capital projects are, it does have requirements for fair labor practices and specific requirements due to the federal funding that would have to be complied with.
And then Eric had added a comment that I can read for everyone. And so it's on the recording. Just a few things to point out on metal materials and integration of plantings. Metal is usually treated with a powder coating that gives it a more cool touch for users if it's a material within range of a user on the bridge. And using materials like steel or metal and concrete for a bridge ensures a structure that has longevity. Finally, integration of plant materials is very important for our department in the city, and we intend to add native planting and as much landscape as possible. Okay, and then question, it was mentioned that curb bump outs along Los Feliz would be used as additional planter space. Would planting trees create a visibility issue? There, I imagine keeping the bump outs clear would be slightly safer.
Yeah, sorry, Ryan, were you gonna jump in there?
I was just gonna say that in terms of visibility, there's, typically the clear zone that keeps the canopy up high and clear so that the lines, the site visibility triangle, or these are sort of metrics that engineers will use to assess the visibility of all users that come into an intersection. Keeping the plant clearings, the shrubs at a certain height to not exceed 2 to 3 feet, the tree canopies to be maintained at a certain height so that you get that clear zone.
Yeah, it's definitely something that we will, as we get into the landscaping scope of the project during a final design phase, we'll ensure that it meets all of those visibility requirements and that we're designing it safely.
And then just a follow-up comment from Gretchen about you missing the point that the study needs to be done before a final decision on the alignment related to the use of arterials. And then next question, do you know the average motorized vehicle speed and volume along this section of Apache?
Yes, those are available. I don't have that as part of this presentation, but we have a online dashboard that shows that segment, as well as I think most of our arterial roads in the city. If you leave your email contact, I can go ahead and forward you a link to that dashboard so that you can see that available data.
Did anyone else have any questions? You're welcome to come off mute and ask or put it in the chat. All right, Chase, did you have any wrap-up information?
No, I did not. I really appreciate everyone taking time out of their lunch hour to provide this feedback and review this design. Please take the survey when you have a moment so that we can get your written comments recorded and considered with all the other comments that we've received over the next 2 weeks. And all the project materials will be available at tempe.gov/UPRR bike ped bridge.
All right, Chase, and we had one more question come in to wrap us up. Is Los Feliz planned as a shared road for bikes and vehicles?
That is something that we were considering to have shared lane markings as well for bicyclists that want to share the roadway to increase visibility. So it could be a shared road condition. It's not something that we have shown currently on this preliminary design, but something that we're going to consider in the final design stage.
Okay, great. Thank you everyone so much for your time today.